right. How is everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing well this morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. For me, it's the morning. So if I look a little tired, I'm working on my cup of coffee. Probably about halfway through this stream, I will be a little bit more excitable. So maybe it's good. Maybe it's a good thing. All right, yeah, so this is the new time, if anybody was wondering. I wanted to do this. I think that actually a lot of my followers are from Europe, or actually some are from Africa and Europe. I don't have a whole lot of people from the United States. I don't know if that says much about me when my own countrymen leave me alone. Anyways, this works for me as well, doing it in the morning. So yeah, I've never thought about enjoying it, but I don't actually mind. It wasn't too bad. I woke up like a little bit early, and yeah, kind of excited to get into the news. So, all right. I did start just a minute early, so I won't jump right into the news. But yeah, so please let me know if this time works well for you, and I will keep doing it at this time. I think it actually works really well for me as well. So. Okay, let me start this off with my general disclaimer. As always, all opinions here are my own. I have not been asked to say anything by anyone, have not been paid to say anything by anyone. All of the opinions here reflect that of myself and not any past, present, or future companies that I might work for. All right. Another thing that I wanted to touch on, I make a lot of jokes about open source is dead. And one of my friends was actually telling me that if they didn't know me better, it might be a little confusing. And one of my reasons for this is, if open source is a community, how does it die unless if everybody leaves the community? If you're not charging for a product or whatnot and are just being part of a community doing something, it's very hard to label it as dead. It's a lot of times corporation and corporate news that is talking about it. Now, you could make the statement that, corporate sponsored open source is dead or something like that. But that would be a better statement instead of open source is dead. So anyways, generally I'm poking fun of those. If you didn't know before now. All right, so we are going to start today with a bunch of security. So a lot of things with regards to security happened last week. And then we're going to move on. Oh, by the way, audio check. Everything sounds good, hopefully. Let me know if it doesn't, and I'll try to fix it. I'm not an audio engineer, though. Okay, so we're going to start with security. There was a lot of security. Then we're going to move to some random topics that I thought were cool, worth talking about. And then we're going to go with the projects that you should know. So only 3 sections this week. The projects that you should know about, the open source projects and the shout out, are going to actually be mostly focused on some security things for Kubernetes and open source in general. So you're going to get to see a lot of those if you're interested in those. Let's jump on to this. I need to set up hotkeys to jump between my scenes. All right, so I almost made today's clickbait title about NPM and how it had another malicious package, but then I thought that was just too easy to pick on them. But this one was actually kind of interesting, and the only reason I brought it up, we don't talk about NPM very much, mainly because I don't use it at all. But actually, that's not true. But anyways. The reason I bring it up here is because this one was actually used to steal passwords from your Chrome web browser. So anyways, if you do use NPM and know how to use the front end of the web, be on the lookout for this. Now we'll move on to stuff I can actually talk more about. All right, volume up a little bit? Absolutely. How does this sound? Is that a little bit better? I tried to turn it down as much as possible to get rid of some of the ambient fan noise as my laptop tries to take off, as it's not meant for streaming. It's what it tells me every single time I do this. All right, so let me know if that audio is better, and I'm glad this time works better for you. Let's move on to some more relevant to me, relevant to open source and the cloud more specifically. We had a couple Linux kernel bugs this week. So 2 that I can think of off the top of my head. This one was leading to an integer overflow, stack overflow here, guys, with an out-of-bound writes, which allowed for an escalation of root privilege. I'm actually worse at speaking English in the morning, which allowed unprivileged users to gain root access, basically. So this is actually a pretty severe security. I know they say it's still ongoing for their analysis, but I think anything that allows root escalation by an unprivileged user is probably pretty severe. Now, again, this is probably more for your Linux distribution to patch, and what you need to do is watch and make sure that when the patch is released, that you go ahead and patch. So if you're on the long-term support for Ubuntu or Red Hat or SUSE, they're going to patch this and they're going to get you builds out for whichever supported OS you're using. But it's good to know. So NSO, if you guys don't know, was the group that launched the Pegasus attacks, or the spyware attacks, spyware. And Amazon pulled the plug on a lot of their cloud infrastructure. It shows you the power that cloud companies have to help stop some disruptive things. Now, we can get into an argument about whether Pegasus was hyped up or not, but I did find it funny that the French president changes his phone. I found that funny. I can't help myself. All right, moving on. This was in the wrong place. Yep, we're still talking about security. All right, we're still talking about that's in the random cloud stuff. I got my tabs all. This is the other one. This is, I don't think, as severe, but it is could result in a denial of service attack. So basically, there is a way to crash the systemd. So this is an issue inside systemd, and it allows you to crash the system, which would cause a denial of service attack if executed properly. So this is definitely something to be looking out for. Maybe not as severe as root escalation. I don't consider it as severe because root escalation, you can steal sensitive data, which I feel is much worse than denying it. But it is still a security threat because if you can't access the information, that's part of security. This I thought was actually this is actually the same denial of service attack, but it was a really great read on what it was and how it worked with technical details on the file path and everything, on why it happens and how you could actually use it. And so I loved the read. I'm not a security researcher, but I found all of this stuff really useful and helpful as they went through analyzing it. Anyways, now I do warn you throughout some of it, they're kind of like showcasing their product, their security product. I apologize for that. But needless to say, even without that, they had some really good information in this top part. So it's definitely worth a read. I didn't find a CVE for this. This is a Windows bug. I don't do a whole lot with Windows, but basically it was allowing people to read basically the encrypted key store for the passwords. Now, I'm not sure if it's only Windows 11 or Windows 10 as well. You can follow the replies because some people say that it works on Windows 10. You have to have like several other things enabled for it to actually work. So again, wasn't able to find a CVE, but there's definitely something out there. So definitely worth checking out. Also, feel free to pipe in the chat if I say something that you disagree with. I really would love to have conversations. I think that having good disagreements is great and just makes a stronger community. All right, so why is this in the security? And that's because it's supply chain security feature to the Go community. So they're rolling this out for different languages, and the more popular the language is, the faster they roll out these features. And so if you want to go and read more about it, if you don't know what their supply chain security features are, they definitely go into more detail here with a lot of different links. But basically, it's how their dependabot works and is able to give you CVEs and security warnings when you're using different projects in NPM, I think, is one of their supported ones, JavaScript, and now Go is supported as well. So this is actually really cool, and I'm really excited. I love it when places like this roll these things out to community, because it just makes the community better. Your Go projects hosted on GitHub are going to be more secure because of this, or can be more secure because of this. And it's free. They're not putting it behind a paywall. I've always said safety, security should never be behind a paywall, because those should be default options. This is also not security. Man, I did a bad job. Oh, we might actually just be done. This is the last security thing, last security point here. There is a new attack vector. This one I think I actually reported a week ago, but I didn't watch the whole video to try to validate whether I actually did it. But there is Argo workflows, something that I really like. There is a security vulnerability. What makes this one difficult is it's actually just misconfiguration. Just like misconfiguring Kubernetes can make it insecure. And so it's very difficult because there's not necessarily a CVE or a patch that you can do. It's just understanding better how to use what you have and what you're using. So if you misconfigure Kubernetes, it can be very insecure. And it's not a CVE. And the same goes with Argo workflows. So this is nothing against Argo workflows or saying that Argo CD is insecure at all. It's all just saying that if you misconfigure it, which maybe a lot of people do, that you can get into a bad security vulnerability scenario. Now, that being said, I think that you can always take these and make better defaults. Places like kubeadm, which is probably the default installer for Kubernetes, goes to lengths to make sure that you install it securely and that you have sane defaults around a lot of your things, like you're using TLS certificates and things like that. So yeah, yep, and I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree there with you. I'm going to take a crack at your name. You're going to correct me, and then in the future, I'm going to mess it up again, and you're going to correct me again, and then I'm going to get it correct. Grochem? Grochem? I'm hoping that, yeah, I didn't screw that up too bad. But yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. Good point. All right, let's move on, because now we can move to not security-related topics. All right, I found this interesting. I do have a Mac. I have that Mac Mini, and so I might actually try to use it on that. If people are interested, I definitely will try it. Myself, I'm not that interested. I use Visual Studio Code on most of my Linux and Vim, so I'm pretty covered, but there is a new preview. I know 5 years ago they came out with a Mac preview for Visual Studio. I didn't really like it then, but I don't know. Maybe it's gotten a lot better. I haven't used Visual Studio, anything other than Visual Studio Code, for a very long time. So, for US people, this is a much bigger deal, but hopefully across the world people get this. Basically, a couple months ago, the FTC reported on right to repair, basically. That's not what they call it here. This is their report, which is very lengthy. This is not a short read, but it was a report on basically how Apple is a horrible company. And I mean that the right to repair is actually really hurting consumers. From John Deere tractors, I didn't realize tractors had this problem, but tractors have this problem, especially John Deere. as well as cell phones. And now there's a lot of people who don't understand because your car has the right to repair, and that's why you can go and buy parts for it at an auto store and go get it fixed from whoever you like, because cars have the right to repair. So anyways, this is a huge step for us. I'm super happy about it. And this is, I'm sorry, we did move into random news. So if you wanted the security, go rewind. If you want random news, that's what we're in now. And then we're going to talk about projects in just a little bit, open source projects that you can use. A lot of them are around security. So anyways, this is really exciting. They actually did release new rules, and we will look at how that's going to make things better. Because hopefully it brings cheaper repairs to your cell phones, because repairers can actually now get the things that they need to repair your phone. Oh, sweet. Please go ahead and let me know how you like it on Mac OS. I've never really tried it. Let me look at the words. The words. Let me look at the words really quickly. You can't get used to Visual Studio Code. Yeah, I mean, everybody has a preference. I used to think Vim was of the devil. Sometimes I still am tempted to agree, but I use it a lot, and it fills a niche. VS Code, I feel the same way. There's times it doesn't work really well, but it actually works across the board better than any one tool. So yeah, you really like the JetBrains is good. First, it costs. So yeah, if you're using it as a team, it costs. And then I find that they nickel and dime you, because you got to buy a new IDE for every single language you want. And you're probably right. For each individual language, it's better. Yeah, you're probably right. But it's never been that big of a deal for me. I guess I use Vim enough that, yeah. Feels nice to not be in Vim. You know, you get some error highlighting. All right, so this I thought was a really interesting read, and there's so many times when you get promoted out of what you're good at, because you're good at it, so then you get promoted until you're finally not good at what you're doing. And I thought this was really good. So HashiCorp, one of my favorite Go engineering shops. I do dock them a point because they hold steadfast to Go. Is basically one of the founders is stepping down off the board to allow for another board member and going back to a technical leadership role, and will be not in a C-suite position anymore. And I think that this is really cool. I think that if you want to go ahead and read this, again, I will post the links down below. But basically, yeah, he's stepping down to do a more technical leadership role, what he's good at, and I think it's really cool. So yeah, wanted to have a shout out for that. Mitchell, if you want to interview, I do some interviews. If anybody knows him, wants to get me in contact, I would love to interview. I might send him an email. This was interesting. ARM is saying that performance per watt is the new Moore's Law, which I would tend to agree. The only thing is, I got really stumped right here. This girl is going to get her hair stuck in this fan, and I don't know if people with hair have ever done this. Also, they're like holding direct current right by their hands here. I don't know. This picture terrifies me. The entire thing about this picture, the jumper wires right here with this girl's arm, the fan, the hair, the jumper. This picture terrifies me. But I tend to agree with the rest of the statement that the performance per watt is definitely the thing. This is what the Mac Mini does so well. Its performance per watt is outstanding. It's fantastic. If it didn't have that memory issue, it would be, and if it could run Linux, it would be the best computer ever. And if it could have expandable memory and disk drive. There's my wants. I have only a few wants. It would be the best computer out there. So anyways, it's worth a read. Definitely if you're into Moore's Law and what it means. And I tend to agree. Still a terrifying picture. I hope that this is battery power and this is battery power and the cables are just for show. And hopefully her hair doesn't get stuck in the fan. Moving on. Okay, so this actually was a very interesting topic. This company, Ably, I don't really know what they do, but they released why they don't use Kubernetes and what they do instead. And what I think is really cool about this article is it really talks about sane architecture for what you do. Kubernetes isn't always a one-stop shop to fix all of your needs. And they talked about how right now this was a simpler architecture for them and simpler for them to maintain. And it explains their thought process. They use Docker, and why not, Kubernetes is just one more step. All right, before I get into Ably, let's talk about Terraform, because people have stuff. You know what? I think you would be correct to say that both Vagrant and Terraform are losing. Funny that you say this. I actually have this, which is Kubeflow at home. I'm releasing the video. I was thinking about releasing it today, but I'm not releasing it today. I'll probably release it tomorrow, just because I'm already doing a video today. I work hard on these things, like to space them out. I also find if I release 2 things in one day, the other one won't get watched, oddly. Anyways, in that, I talk about one of the things I don't like is Vagrant. One of the solutions requires Vagrant, and I don't like Vagrant because it requires VirtualBox. And VirtualBox is my least favorite virtualization, and one of the reasons it's my least favorite is because it disables all other virtualization on your piece of hardware. I think one of the big problems that Terraform is actually looking into is the fact that Terraform itself is having a lot of competition with things like Argo CD. If you want to do GitOps, Terraform, you could make Terraform work in your GitOps, but it's kind of a little wonky. It's not a declarative system unless if you're using the Vagrant cloud. In that case, it works really well, and they have Terraform as a service, and I'm pretty sure they do it in a GitOpsy way. But unless you're doing that, it's not really that easy, and these other things work a little bit easier for GitOps. So I think that's why. Yeah, I think that HashiCorp. Another thing that they do, Nomad is a really cool product, but it's not open source, and so and you might say that it's open core. That core is not usable in any way. You can only run a single node. So I do think that HashiCorp has some issues that they need to solve. But that's more from a management. Yeah, anyways. Yeah, I agree. The Container Lab project. No, I have not heard of the Container Lab project. And you think the future is bright for Apple M2? I'm holding my breath for Apple M2. I really am. There's definitely here's my problem with the Apple products. Let me switch over. I should have switched over when we were talking about this. All right. My problem with the Apple products as they are right now. First, the lack of Linux support, and it kind of breaks my warranty to use Linux if I do. If you put your own bootloader on there, that's kind of a breach of your warranty. That's one big one, because now I can't run Kubernetes natively or do a large cluster with it. And the performance per watt is fantastic. The other problem is they've gone to this direct attached everything for their performance. And the problem with direct attached everything is e-waste, and they're just making throwaway devices. The M1 Mac has 0 upgradability. I can't put more memory in it. It's directly attached. Even their storage is directly attached. Interestingly enough, if you dig into it, it's not even a PCI lane. So they don't even use PCI to abstract out their storage like most people do. It is like direct accessing the storage, which not many people do without a file system. So it gives you great performance, but at the cost of being tons of e-waste. Then not only this, it only comes with 16 gigs of memory. And so if they don't solve that problem, it really uses almost double the amount of memory sometimes, depending on what you're using. And up to 5 times if you're running Docker. So until those are fixed, I can't actually see it working. And I know I get flamed by Apple fanboys, and that's one of my problems with Apple is their fanboys. But like, those are my concerns for the platform. I'm not hating on the fact that price per watt, they killed it. Those are my concerns with the M2. Hopefully they fix those though. And hopefully I didn't lose 12 subscribers because I said something bad about the M1. True story. All right, let's move on to this article because this was really interesting. And thanks for the comments. I love the chat and the conversation, and hopefully it brings a little bit more. And I love that you guys are getting to have a little input on what we're doing here. It's really exciting to actually have live viewers instead of just viewers sometimes later. All right, so basically they released this article. I actually think it's a really well thought out, really cool article, and I have some of the same sentiments when I say Kubernetes is maybe not for everyone. That being said, it was so popular that it actually crashed the blog. So like so many people were looking at it, and everybody was like, oh, it's because they're not running on Kubernetes that they're Look, people that run on Kubernetes have downtime as well. You can't say that. The other thing is that their blog is completely separate from their services. So their services that run in AWS with this architecture were 100% not affected by anything. So anyways, I think it's well worth a read. Even if you use Kubernetes, it can help you solidify what Kubernetes does, why maybe it's not always the best choice, and some other ways that you can do it. Now, I think that and they went into a lot of detail with auto-scaling traffic, DevOps, multi-cloud readiness, hybrid cloud readiness, and infrastructure as code. So they covered a lot of their bases, and it's definitely worth the read anyways. So this person, now I have 2 tabs on Microsoft's new Linux distribution, but I misconfigured them. So we'll get the other tab a little bit later. Oh, sweet. How are you liking that? So I just recorded yesterday. If my voice is a little gruff, I just recorded yesterday the first 10 lessons. It was like 2 hours. It was a little over 2 hours of talking straight. So hopefully I will start releasing those like once a week, probably on a Friday, once every Friday, probably in a week or 2. I gotta edit them up a little bit, but yep, those are coming out. Hopefully you like them, and yeah, hopefully they're helpful. And I've put a lot of work into them. So I'm also doing some online coding things, so you'll have some challenges to go along with those. Thanks for bringing that up. Those will be coming out, and I'll make an announcement on this stream when that comes out. All right. So yeah, Microsoft made a new distro, but they didn't really make a new distro. I actually have, where is it? Here we go. Nope, not that. I have no idea. I have the actual project open in a tab somewhere, but where that is, I don't know. All right. Anyways, he says that it's a warning shot for. I don't actually think that's true. Let's see if this opens up to the right place. Yeah, here we go. So it's CBL, and CBL is really just their. Microsoft has a lot of Linux kernels. You think WSL has a Linux kernel? This has a Linux kernel, and I need to validate this, but I think that this is actually a newer version of what they use in WSL. So it's probably based off of a lot of their other work, and this is not their only kernels that they release. Microsoft has been doing a really good job of releasing anything that they can't sell, which I think is fine. If they don't think that they can sell it, they release it as open source, which is really cool because it allows us to learn from it, and they use really great licenses. Look at this, the MIT license for CBL. What CBL is doing is Microsoft understands most of us run Linux in the cloud, and this is This is really just a way to unify what you can use in their cloud as far as a Linux thing. Now, maybe you could say that, maybe you can say Red Hat beware, but this is no different than Amazon Linux 2 in AWS. They too have a Linux that is really just works for their cloud. And if you want the latest Linux kernel that works with the AWS the best, you use their image. It really is designed to work with their cloud. And that's all Microsoft is doing. They're making a Linux image. Now, if you're doing hybrid or across two clouds, you don't want to use CBL or Amazon Linux 2 because it's designed for that cloud. You're going to want to use Red Hat or something like that. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, actually. But I could be wrong. All right. Large chunks. You know what? This should have been under security, not random. I mean, it's random because it's not in the security, because accessibility is part of security. But a lot of things were down, and it was based off of DNS. If you've learned anything at DNS, check DNS first. Yeah. Oh, yes, Microsoft has Sonic. You're absolutely correct. Microsoft Sonic. 1 second. My playback said there was an error. Yeah, it's Linux for the edge. CBL is. I didn't get that it was just switches. Yeah, for devices and services that will, it's more like the edge, but you could be right. And you're absolutely right about Sonic and Azure Sphere OS. I don't know that that's Linux based. It might be. Microsoft has a ton of Linux kernels would be the end statement there. But anyways, this was a DNS issue and it was eventually solved. So anyways, if you guys were having problems on the internet, I don't know if it affected you. I don't actually use the PlayStation Network or Steam or Airbnb, so maybe I wasn't really affected. All right, I'd have to travel for Airbnb to be useful. I don't do .NET development, but if one of my people do, I found this for you. System.text.json is a new JSON source generator, so if you're into that, it looks like it's more performant and brings all of the features so that there's no, I guess before that there was a, you can either get performance, but it's not very usable, or you could get usable and not very performant. Supposedly, this tries to fix both of those. So, sounds cool. Again, I'm not really big into the .NET, so. This was really cool and landed itself into the random news. I'm a huge fan of RISC-V. You should be waiting for a RISC-V video in the future. And they got an AMD. AMD is really cool because they open source their drivers. So you can actually, people can actually go do this. NVIDIA, this is why AMD GPUs are cool. Not as good, but cool. And I really like this. All right, Cloudflare is bickering with AWS about egress fees. I tend to agree with them because AWS's egress fees are really, I think, there to just keep you from getting your data out of AWS and keeping you in AWS. So I really generally love Cloudflare, and I generally stand behind a lot of the things that they argue about. All right, GitHub blog, minimum viable governance, lightweight community structure to grow your open source projects. I thought that this was a fantastic read. I've actually been complaining that the cloud native, the CNCF, has been a little overbearing and a little heavy and a little bit too much governance. I could be wrong, and I'm not saying it like I think it's a hugely extravagant and horrible. I'm just saying sometimes it feels a little too project structure-y and whatnot. And this is coming from, GitHub themselves, they're working on this to help smaller open source projects have a good governance structure, because sometimes that is the problem itself. And as I'm looking to release some cool projects in the future as open source, I'm actually really excited about releasing them under this type of organization and structure, which basically just gives, it has 5 big points with decision making, trademark policy, antitrust policy, code of conduct, and project criteria. You might think that antitrust policies and don't matter in a small one, but if you actually get a corporate contributor, so somebody from a corporation that contributes, it actually does matter, even if you're a small project, because you want to make sure that that person is not contributing something that's in the best interest of their company and not your project. So it is actually even important, even if you're a small one, because at first when I read that, I was like, most of us probably don't need that. It's actually probably really important. So this is definitely worth a read if you're into open source. And yeah. I saw this getting NVIDIA. I do get on Reddit every once in a while. Go ahead, thumbs down the video because of that. Anyways, this person, really cool, got NVIDIA the 4070 drivers, which just came out for Ubuntu, to support Wayland. Now, I'm not doing it right now because I actually still want to stream to you guys, and my laptop has a hard enough problem streaming. And yeah, it's very experimental, but NVIDIA is finally bringing support to the GPU for Wayland, which will hopefully crack the nut that needs cracked to get Wayland support, because Wayland is the future. If you want me to go into a rant of how what we're using should have died a long time ago, sorry, X server, it should have. Oh, here's the other, anyways. All right, moving on. All right, so now we're moving into projects you should know about. If you're into machine learning, this project is a little rough. It's very new, and it's a little rough. I didn't actually get it working, but I love the concept and what it's doing. So I'm actually going to get behind it. I'm going to try it a little bit more and see if I can't get it working and make some videos for it. But it is like your machine learning needs on your laptop or at home or on your home server. So I'm pretty excited about it. And if you're into machine learning and want something that's going to handle pipelines and that type of stuff for you, this is definitely worth looking into and pulling and playing around with. I actually know, fair warning, I actually know half of the people on here, and they're fantastic people. Yeah, definitely should check it out. Now let's get into some of the security stuff. This is, I don't really know how to pronounce it. This is Kubernetes search rotation. Why is that? Well, I guess that makes sense on how this would be security, but it's Kubernetes certificate rotation. It's just a daemon set that performs automatic Kubernetes control plane certificate rotation. This doesn't actually make sense in the cloud. If you're running in the cloud, you don't really need one of these things. This is done by your cloud provider and what they're doing. But if you're running bare metal, I actually use this with my kubeadm clusters to rotate those certificates. So it's definitely really cool. Yeah, it watches the kubeadm generated certificates on the host system and renews them. Super cool. And yeah, Jinting is a fantastic developer, and you should follow him on GitHub if you haven't. All right, this is kubeadm. Has nothing to do with security, but I know I talk about it a lot. You guys should go check it out. Give the developers on here some love. These people are pretty fantastic people. So, and they really made Kubernetes became so much more accessible with the work kubeadm did. So much more. So it's definitely worth checking out. KubeWarden. This used to be called Chimera, or I know. Yeah, finally NVIDIA. Yeah. Anyways, it used to be called Chimera, and now it's called KubeWarden. It went a little under some rebranding as it became more popular. But this is a pretty cool project. that is admission policies in Kubernetes that use WebAssembly. So you can write it in whatever language you want, your admission policy, and you can then use it as an admission policy in your Kubernetes cluster. And so it's really cool, definitely worth checking out, and there's another reason why it's under the security. And I do have to warn you that, fair warning, I do actually know some of the people that work on this. I don't know if that's like needs to be a disclosure when I'm just talking about open source projects. I know a lot of the people on here too, I guess. I don't know. When I like a project, I usually get involved with it, or at least get to know the people, or try to at least. So I know a lot of them. Security Profile Operator is a operator for your Kubernetes cluster to manage seccomp profiles. If you don't know what seccomp profiles are, I will have to do a video on that. But this is definitely, if you do know what they are, this is definitely worth taking a look at. This project came out of SUSE during a hack week. A couple colleagues of mine, fantastic engineers, both of the ones that I'm thinking about are, worked on this, working on it, and it has got a life of its own now. There's an entire group of people that work on it, and it's really awesome if you're wanting to support a more secure Kubernetes cluster. And last but not least, don't all leave quite yet, I usually talk a little afterwards, is the OPA Open Policy Agent. This is a masterpiece of work. Actually, I don't know that I know anybody that works on this, for fair disclosure. I don't know. There's 232 I possibly could know. None of those look familiar. Well, that one looks familiar, but that's like the default. Anyways, so I don't know that I know anybody that works on this. And it is really fantastic. If you're looking to be a compliant Kubernetes cluster, or you have a compliant service that runs in Kubernetes, OPA is really a great way to bring compliance to your cluster. And so it's definitely worth checking out and learning and understanding and playing around with. And I know I probably need to make a video on it, because I really do think that OPA should really be used in more clusters than it actually is used in. It allows you to do a lot of stuff. A colleague of mine, she made a demo where she restricted the number of repositories and what repositories, for image repositories, different nodes were allowed to access. And so it allows you to do so much stuff. Can't say enough good about it, even though I don't know any of the people. Well, I don't know that I know any of the people that do anything on it. All right. Yeah. Grockham, I'm sorry, I am destroying your name. I know it, and I apologize. I only know English, and I only know it like 3/4 of the way. So I apologize. But yes, finally, NVIDIA has been holding Wayland back for years, and it's annoying. And Wayland really is the future. If you don't know the pain of multiple monitors with an X server, especially if they're not the same resolution, if you have a laptop monitor that you want scaled because you were an idiot and bought a 4K monitor on a little 15-inch screen, and you want it scaled, but you don't want your other monitors scaled because they're the right size, you can't actually do it. It's really not great. Yeah, Windows 365 is a good call out. I talked about it a little bit, yes. I'm going to have to actually try it, because one, those videos get way more clicks than any other video that I make. And so I don't actually make videos for clicks. But if I did, I would make one on Windows 365. I think it's an interesting product. The weird part about Windows 365 for me, I think that it's a really cool project if you're talking about compliance. If you're like, well, these files have to stay on our servers, period. So there's places that do this, like HIPAA. That's a US law for medical files. And so they will say, like, all of your files have to stay on our servers. You can't actually have them on your computer. And so I think that's a really cool aspect of it. But for me, if you look at like the base package at the base price, you're getting a computer that if you bought that computer, it would be like a $200 laptop. And I'm talking like the whole laptop would be like $200 because it has like one virtual core and 2 gigs of memory. And it's like, is it really saving you any money to do? And I mean, like, why would you use a virtual desktop if your computer at home is better? I don't really know. So maybe I'm missing a big point. Please correct me if you guys think that Windows 365, and I'm talking mostly about the place where you can have Windows in the cloud. I guess it could be really interesting for Linux users who want to use Word or have a good Zoom call because you know what? I use Linux and nothing works properly on Linux except for Linux things, but I mean like the Windows and Mac tools. So you're talking about Zoom. I use Google Meet a lot, and none of them really like working on Linux. Maybe I could see using those in. It still feels weird to pay what, $35 a month to then be able to use Zoom, but maybe that's actually a really good use for it. I don't know. Maybe I need to keep a more open mind. But yes, you're right. Modern version of Terminal PC. I want to thank Gresha and Gorkum. I'm really sorry. Both of you, I'm really sorry. I want to thank you for coming out, hanging out, leaving your comments and feedback. Hopefully it makes this whole show better. And it was actually really awesome to sit here and talk with people. So if this time is working well for you all and you all like it, let me know and I'll keep doing it at this time. All right. I don't know that I have anything else. Hopefully you guys like that news section. Hopefully you guys found it useful, and I will get timestamps later today. I have to go and eat breakfast with my children. So. All right. You guys have a fantastic week. I hope that you have a really great week and that this news helps you somehow running something in the cloud. And I look forward to releasing a new video, hopefully more consistently because my Kubernetes videos are coming out. And yeah, have a fantastic week, everyone.